SMU could be the college football playoff contender that not enough people are talking about going into the 2026 college football season. The Mustangs were just there 2 years ago, and they return a great nucleus of players, including their quarterback. This could be the team. They were the surprise a couple years ago in the first year of the 12-team playoff and didn't show themselves that well at Penn State, but certainly earned their spot after losing to Clemson in the ACC title game. Coming off another good year, and I think SMU could be right back in contention once again. Guys, you're listening to the You Think You Know Sports podcast. We're going to talk about the Mustangs today. You can find out a lot more on SMU and all the other teams in college football, not only through this podcast, where we're releasing at least one a day as we go through everybody in Division One FBS college football, but also on my website, youthinkyouKnowsports.com. It's you instead of YOU, youthinkyouKnowsports.com, as well as my TikTok page where I've got over 10,000 followers. You can find us on all the social medias, but TikTok is the one that has been going on the longest. So, look, SMU 9-4 last year, 6-2 in the ACC. And to be honest, I think if you went down the street, Jay Leno style, and you just said, "Hey, what was SMU's college football record last year?" I think you'd get a response all over the map. I'm not sure how many people would say, "Oh, they were 9-4. They won 9 games last year." Well, they did, and I'll tell you what's really impressive under Rhett Lashley, their head coach, who continues to win there. They're 22-2 in conference play the last 3 years. Let me say that again: 22-2 the last 3 years in conference play. That is wild. I don't think there's a team in college football that can match that. I haven't gone through the entire country, but I'd be surprised. Okay, maybe the Ohio States of the world, maybe, but the very rarefied air. Now, people will point out, well, 3 years ago they were in the American. That's right. They didn't lose in their last season in the American in the regular season conference play. They didn't lose 2 years ago in ACC regular season play. They lost to Clemson in the ACC Championship game, which allowed both Clemson and SMU to squeeze into that brand new 12-team playoff 2 years ago. And then guess what? This year they were 6-2. And I want to explain that 6-2. They had 4 losses this year. 3 of them were by 3 or less. So their conference losses were by 3 to Cal and by 1 to Wake Forest. It is hard to be better than that, or closer than that. SMU was this close, and you can imagine as you're listening to this, my fingers being very close together in the air, to being undefeated in ACC play again last year. Very close, They were 20th in points per game last year, 31 points per game, not a problem on offense. 24th in yards per game, over 400 yards per game. They passed on 55% of their offensive plays last year, 22nd most in the country. The defense was the issue. This was a team that was just not good enough on defense. They gave up 286 passing yards per game. That was 134th in the country. And opponents passed on 55% of their plays, just like SMU was passing. SMU games were as pass happy as you could get in college football last year. Now, they were great against the run. They only gave up 3.2 yards per carry on the ground, 14th best in the country. But look, the optimism behind this team is certainly not the defense, although I think it could be a lot improved this year. Kevin Jennings is the reason. Kevin Jennings is entering his 3rd year as the starter at SMU. 26 touchdowns, 13 picks last year. He has 49 touchdowns and 24 interceptions in his career. Kevin Jennings has been in the college football playoff, man. I mean, listen, I know things didn't go well at State College when SMU went and played Penn State in that college football playoff opener a couple years ago. But this is a guy who really isn't going to see anything from anyone that he hasn't seen so far. Think about this for a second. How many 3-year starters are there in college football at quarterback? Not many. Not many. If they're great, they go to the NFL. If they're at a smaller school, they figure out a reason to transfer. But how many haven't even transferred? The list is even smaller. Think of how many guys have started for 3 years in the current college football landscape and are still at their school. And Kevin Jennings certainly fits that mold. And I think that it's a huge part of why SMU is going to be ranked in the top 25 to begin this year. I certainly believe that's going to be the case. He was 32 of 68 on deep balls last year. Over 1,100 yards passing on deep balls, 11 touchdowns, and 3 picks. Okay. I love a quarterback that can throw the ball down the field and stretch defenses. He threw it down the field close to about the top 10 in the country last year. Darian Menzel was number 1 in the 80s, and Jennings threw 68 deep balls. The other thing I'll add is he ran a ton less last year. He ran for less yards, and he ran 31 less times. So can Jennings get back to using his legs and making them a weapon for this SMU offense? His under pressure numbers, super impressive. He completed almost 53% of his passes under pressure, 11 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. So Kevin Jennings is good under pressure as well, which is not super surprising for a guy who has played in the big games that he has in his career. Now, if you go beyond the quarterback, they have 6 other players back on offense. Derek McFall is back at running back. They've got 2 receivers, Jalen Cooper and Ymir Knight. And then they've got Joshua Bates, an honorable mention offensive lineman for All ACC. PJ Williams, which is on the second team, All ACC. Addison Nichols is back on the offensive line as well. So SMU's got some pieces on the O-line. I don't think there's any doubt about that. McFall did not have a huge year, but Kendrick Raphael is coming in from California. 943 yards rushing, 13 touchdowns for California last year. And Raphael is going to be just an injection of running talent for this SMU team that really needs to run the ball more, take pressure off of Kevin Jennings. He's going to be a breath of fresh air. Somebody that you can give the ball to over 200 times over the course of the season and can get and find the end zone. I think that's going to be huge for this SMU team. If you remember right, TJ Harden, the leading rusher for SMU, went to the NFL. Jordan Hudson went to the NFL. Brenton, their other receiver, went to the NFL. So bringing in guys like having Jalen Cooper and Ymir Knight back is huge. They also got Yannick Smith in from East Carolina. He had 44 catches last year. Randy Pittman is a tight end who's coming over from Florida State. He had 23 catches last year for this SMU offense. So there are some pieces around Kevin Jennings that make it even more likely that he's going to have a really good year offensively for this SMU team. Defensively, there's only 4 guys back, right? So, you'd love to have more than that, but they have Brandon Booker and Alexander Kilgore at linebacker. Marcellus Barnes and William Nettles are back in the defensive secondary. And they lost 4 defensive linemen that totaled 24 sacks last year, and 7 of their 10 leading tacklers are gone. It's not good news, right? They bring in defensive tackles, Malcolm Alcorn Crowder from Kansas State and Christian Davis from Louisiana Tech, as well as 2 defensive backs, Jarvis Lee and Jimmy Wyrick from Lee from South Florida, Wyrick from Texas San Antonio. So look, I think you got to see a step made from Booker, from Kilgore, and then the rest of these guys are going to have to fit in. Because let's be honest, they were really good against the run, but SMU lost a lot of games last year because their defense couldn't come up with a stop, right? Again, stop the run, yes. But when teams know that they can beat you through the air, they're going to do it. And that is what happened with the Mustangs all too often last year on a team that was relatively close to playing in the ACC Championship game in a weird year, right? Where Duke ended up winning it. So, I always kind of caution people like Miami feels like the big favorite here, but Duke just won the title in the ACC and Miami didn't even play for it. So just keep that in mind as everybody is kind of anointing Miami as the clear favorites here in the ACC. SMU gets to begin its season with a national broadcast. They will play in Tallahassee in a conference game on Labor Day night, 6:30 p.m. Central Time, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. In a huge game. Right now they're favored in that game to go into Tallahassee and beat the Noles. Week 2 which is only 5 days later, they play UC Davis. Then they have another week before they play Louisville October 19th. Listen, 2 road games in your first 3 at Florida State and at Louisville is not ideal. But I think if you can come out of those games 2-1, which I think is possible for this SMU team, if you can go 2-1, I think you're okay for the next little stretch. Because I'll tell you, the next 4 games are all at home. They don't go on the road again until Halloween. So they play September the 19th at Louisville, and then they're not back on the road until they play Syracuse on Halloween. Those 4 home games are Missouri State, Boston College, Virginia, and California, right? Then they go on the road to Syracuse. They come back home to play Virginia Tech. Then they play Wake Forest on the 14th of October. Then they end the year with 2 road games at Notre Dame and at Stanford. So I don't love it having to play the West Coast game, but at least for SMU, it's not as far of a trip as a team like Pittsburgh or Miami going to California or Stanford. Also, getting to play that road trip as your very last regular season game, I think, is an advantage. Now, if you have an ACC Championship game the next week, it's probably not an advantage. But if you're just thinking about it from a regular season perspective, maybe it works out that you're not playing it mid-season and having another opponent to get ready for the next week. Now, that is Thanksgiving week where you have to go to Stanford. You know, there's going to be a lot of distractions there. But we'll see how that pans out. They've got to get there first. You know, I think Florida State is a team that has got a lot of questions. That's the opener. I think Louisville is a team that, week 3 game could be a top 25 team. A lot of people believe they will be. We'll see how the quarterback is there. The next 4, I think, are very winnable. I think California's scary. That could be a very fun game with Jennings and JKS on the same field. Syracuse could be a lot of fun with Steve Angeli back again. And then, Virginia Tech with James Franklin, going to be a lot of fun. We'll see how good they are by November 6th. And, of course, the Notre Dame game on November 21st is absolutely gigantic, right? I mean, we know how good Notre Dame is projected to be. SMU could be one of the hardest teams on their schedule, along with BYU and Miami. So we'll see. Guys, listen, you are hearing the You Think You Know Sports podcast. We're talking about SMU today. We're still going through the rest of the ACC. We've got Stanford up next on the podcasts, and I hope that you'll listen to that. This podcast is available anywhere that you can find podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, YouTube, Podbean. There's so many different options. Tell your friends about it if you love college football. Hope you'll go check out my TikTok profile. You've got my Linktree link up there, and you can see all the places you can find my content all over the internet. There will be a big blog post on SMU up soon on youthinkyouknowsports.com, as well on the rest of the ACC. I appreciate you listening, and I hope you'll join me for the next one when we break down the Cardinal.